In the heart of the mist-veiled mountains, nestled in a village untouched by the hurried pace of the outside world, lived a young woman named Alara. She was the village oracle, a vessel for the whispers of the future, her eyes holding visions that others could not comprehend. Her pronouncements were the law of the land, guiding the planting of crops, the mending of fences, and the unions of hearts. Yet, for all the futures she could see, her own remained a frustrating, impenetrable fog. The elders of the village, their faces etched with the wisdom of generations, often spoke of this paradox. They believed it was a necessary sacrifice, a burden she had to bear to protect her people from the whims of fate. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned to fire and gold, the elders delivered a decree that sent a tremor through Alara's usually calm demeanor. A vision, they claimed, had come to them in a shared dream, a rare and powerful omen. The vision was clear. Alara was to be wed. Her groom was to be a man named Kale, a humble woodcarver who lived at the edge of the forest. This news was not a joyous revelation for Alara. She had foreseen snippets of Kale's life before, glimpses of a man stumbling through a world he could not see. Kale was blind, his eyes clouded since birth, and in Alara's visions, he appeared utterly helpless. The oracle felt a bitter irony in the decree. She, who could see the destinies of kings and the fall of mountains, was to be bound to a man who couldn't even see the path before him. She pleaded with the elders, arguing that her duty was to the village, not to a single, sightless man. How could she serve her people while tending to a husband who needed constant care? Her heart ached with a sense of injustice. She saw a future of thankless servitude, her own gifts stifled by the demands of his dependency. But the elders were resolute. The vision was a command from the spirits, and it could not be defied. With a heavy heart, Alara consented to the marriage. The ceremony was a simple, somber affair, held under the ancient oak tree in the village square. Kale stood beside her, his face a mask of quiet composure. He was tall and lean, his hands calloused from his trade, but surprisingly gentle as they took hers. He spoke little, his voice a low, soothing timbre that seemed at odds with the helplessness Alara had envisioned. She, however, could not shake the feeling of being trapped, her future now tethered to a life she did not choose and could not foresee. She felt like a bird forced into a cage, her wings clipped by a fate she was supposed to command. Their wedding night was filled with an awkward, oppressive silence. Alara retired to their small cottage, the scent of pine and freshly cut wood filling the air. She watched as Kale moved around the dimly lit room with an unnerving, practiced grace. He navigated the space not with sight, but with a deep, instinctual knowledge of its every nook and cranny. He didn't stumble. He didn't fumble. He was not the helpless man from her visions. Confused and unsettled, Alara lay awake long after Kale's soft breathing evened out into the rhythm of sleep, the silence of the night amplifying the turmoil in her mind. It was then that she heard it. A soft, whispering sound, like dry leaves skittering across a stone floor. It came from the corner of the room, where Kale's latest carvings were arranged on a wooden shelf. Alara sat up, her heart pounding against her ribs. In the flickering candlelight, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The small wooden figures, a stoic bear, a cunning fox, a soaring eagle, were moving. Their tiny, carved limbs shifted with a slow, deliberate life. Their painted eyes, which had been blank and lifeless hours before, now glinted with an otherworldly intelligence. Frozen in a mixture of terror and awe, Alara watched as the fox carving turned its head towards the bear. Its wooden jaw opened, and a voice, ancient and resonant, echoed in the small room. It was not a whisper, but a clear, prophetic utterance. "The river will swell before the next full moon," the fox declared, its voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "The lower fields will flood." The bear figure then turned, its own voice a deep rumble that seemed to shake the very foundations of the cottage. "A sickness will come with the northern winds," it warned, carried on the wings of the gray crow. One by one, the carvings began to speak, their voices weaving a tapestry of prophecies. They spoke of droughts and bountiful harvests, of new life and sudden loss, of conflicts brewing in distant lands. The visions they described were clearer and more detailed than any Alara had ever received. She realized with a staggering, world-altering shock what was happening. Kale was not merely a woodcarver. He was a conduit, a vessel far more powerful than she had ever imagined. He carved the future into the wood, and at night, his creations gave it a voice. His blindness was not a weakness. It was the source of his power, allowing him to see not with his eyes, but with his hands and his soul. He didn't see the world as it was, but as it would be. The next morning, Alara looked at her husband with new eyes. The man she had pitied was a seer whose gifts dwarfed her own. The helplessness she had perceived in her visions was not his, but her own, a reflection of her own blindness to the true nature of his power. He could not see the world, but he could shape its story. She, the village oracle, had been compelled to marry him not to care for a helpless man, but to become the interpreter for a prophet whose prophecies were too profound for the world to hear directly. Her future, once a frustrating fog, was now terrifyingly clear. She could see his future, carved in wood and whispered on the midnight air, but in doing so, she had finally begun to understand her own. She was not the seer, she was the seer's bride, the keeper of his secrets, and the voice for his silent, wooden oracles.